Hi! So as you can tell from the title of this video, this video is going to be about my Hyundai experience, and I'm going to give you the quick 30-second version of the video now so that if you don't want to watch, you can look and see how long the video is. Basically, I would just say this. If you have a Hyundai or you're thinking about buying one, go search online issues with engines, engine failures, engine seizures, things like that. And you'll come to the same conclusion that the point of this whole video. But the point of this video is to share with you my own personal experience in owning a Hyundai. So let's get into it. A little bit of history. I love old muscle cars. I do have some notes here so I don't get too carried away. I love sports cars, but my second real car was a '91 Toyota Tercel. I loved it. It worked fantastic. I owned it 5 years. The only thing that happened was I had to replace the washer fluid pump. And I mean, I paid $3,500 for it and sold it for $2,800 5 years later. I never should have sold that thing. Since then, I've owned a Corolla, a Celica, a Camry hybrid, and I've had really good luck with all of my Toyotas. And I'm skipping a lot of notes, which is great because I wanted this video to be to the point and quick. Then we came to this point in our family where we thought, you know what, we're going to replace the Camry hybrid and get something a little bit different, and I ventured out. I thought I'm probably going to lean towards a Honda, but they hold their values so well that I wanted to find kind of that really good deal. And I found this 2011 Sonata. This was a few years ago, and the price was great, the car looked great. I talked to the dealership, and I want to tell you what they said. Right, of course, now this is a salesperson. And so we're shooting the breeze, and I told him how much I love Toyotas. And he said, really, there's only two manufacturers that are at the top today, Honda and Hyundai. He said, Toyota is old news. We're better than Toyota. We'll stand behind our product. And he said, I should have clued into this, but he said, if the engine ever fails, we'll replace it for free. And that should have got my attention, but it didn't. So I read consumer reports and everything, and they seem to have really good stats at the time, which now makes me wonder about consumer reports, but that's a whole different video. So fast forward, I bought it. I bought the 2011 Sonata. I want to start with some pros. I loved the way it looked. Loved it. Got great fuel mileage. It was comfortable. It looked great on the inside too. I mean, the Toyotas that I was used to, pretty basic. You can tell it's kind of a budget car in a way. But this Sonata, it looked fancy, even though the materials were still kind of cheap, but whatever. And then, just reading my notes here. Oh, I should say a couple other things I noticed. It didn't handle as well as the Toyotas. It was not nearly as quiet. It was a little bit louder than the Toyotas that I was used to. Then things started to happen. So I got a call at work from my wife. She was stuck in a parking lot because the car wouldn't start. So we had to call a tow truck to come and tow it to our local mechanic, and it was the starter. Starter was bad, not a big deal, not super expensive, but just kind of inconvenient, right? Fast forward again. I'm taking my son to piano lessons, and this is where the story really starts. It was a very cold winter day. I had just gotten some groceries. We were coming out of the grocery parking lot, and the car just shut off, and all the lights on the dashboard came on. So I quickly pulled over while I still had control, and I put it in park, tried to turn it on. It would not start. It was just click, click, click. And I thought, I know it's not the battery because the battery was good. Not really much else I could check out here on the side of the road. So we got out of the car. It was freezing cold. In a matter of seconds, I couldn't feel my fingers. Luckily, he had on gloves and everything because he's smarter than I am. And, someone pulled off the road and gave us a ride to piano lessons, and I went home and called the tow truck again. Okay, so the next day at work, my mechanic called, and he said, I got some bad news. Your engine is seized. I was shocked. He was shocked. He said, any idea how this happened? And I said, no, I mean, we had regular oil changes. I check the oil in between changes. I've got oil in my garage where if it's getting low, I top it off. We were both pretty shocked. And the other thing too that I want to mention is there were no warning lights and there were no warning sounds of any kind. It just up and seized like that, okay? So that's our family car, and I mean, we have 3 kids. We had a newborn at the time. We needed the car back on the road ASAP. I was at work. He said, look, I think I can get a replacement engine at the junkyard, at the salvage yard. And I said, do it. We've got to do it. I need the car back. So he called them. Long story short, they had a couple of donor cars. We got the engine put back in, $2,500. And I thought that was quite reasonable, all things considered. Now here's where the story gets interesting, and this is why I wanted to make the video. My family started teasing me a little bit about my engine seizing up, and they said, you know, you got to take better care of your car. And I defended myself, and I told them about my oil changes. And then I searched up Hyundai engine failures. Whoa. Now I was no longer embarrassed, I was upset. And there's just article after article after article of people's, especially Sonatas and Elantras, just seizing up in the middle of the highway. Now, a lot of these cases, some of them even had news reports about how they had to fight and fight and fight to get their engine replaced, but Hyundai came good on it most of the time. There's one poor guy, I think in BC, happened to him. He had to replace the engine. It was super expensive, and then it happened again, and he had to pay for it the second time. And I was like, why did you buy a Hyundai the second time? So this started my... let me get back to my script so I don't mess it up. Oh, I want to be clear on this. Hyundai knows there's an issue with these engines. Okay? They just can't have a recall, because how are they going to replace everybody's engine? So really what they're doing is trying to put it on warranty. Hopefully you can sneak in when your engine does fail. If it fails, you can sneak it in and it's still under warranty. If not, look out. I called 3 dealerships about the engine failure. The responses I got were really interesting. They all kind of passed the buck a little bit. But one of them said, we don't put warning lights. Because I said, shouldn't there have been a warning light? And they said, we don't put engine warning lights in our cars. And I thought, I think you do. And they also told me that they see engine seizures all the time in Elantras and Sonatas. And I thought, well, then you have a problem. And she said on the phone, and I won't name the dealerships, but she just said, well, bring it in and we'll replace it if it's seized. And I said, well, it's too late for that. I already put in a used engine. And then it's just, well, you're out of luck then, I guess, you know. But I didn't know it was a known issue, and I needed my car back. So I started writing letters to Hyundai headquarters in Ontario. Yes, I do live in Canada. And this is where I don't want to bore you with all of the details, because this took place over a year. A year of phone calls. I must have made 20 phone calls. I wrote maybe 6 or 7 letters. And I thought I was getting somewhere, because they kept saying, if you can prove you owned the car and that the engine did actually seize and that you replaced it, you know, then we'll refund you. But their first problem they brought up was that the receipt that the mechanic wrote out was handwritten. Even though it has his address and, you know, there's a little, what do you call it, there's a number at the bottom so he can track it in his books and so on, like a tax number. So they said, yeah, well, we're going to need some information. If you can give us the VIN number of the donor car, the VIN number of your car, then we can make it happen. So I got that information for them. I mailed it to them. And then, you know, a month goes by. I called them. They said, oh, yeah, well, we need more information. We need this, we need this, we need this. And I said, I can get that for you. So every time I called them and said, hey, how's my case going? When can I expect that check? They'd always come back with a, well, now we need this. So it started heating up for me, and I was starting to get I wouldn't say I got impatient. I was just kind of getting like, what else could they ask for, right? And let me just see what my notes say. Oh, right. They finally got to this wall where they said, we're not going to accept a handwritten receipt. It has to be typed. And I made the point, what's it matter? I mean, a 5-year-old can type up a receipt. It doesn't make it more valid than a handwritten. So I said, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this video camera and I'm going to videotape my mechanic signing a sworn statement so that you can see that, you know, this is his shop. I'll go outside his shop. I can even videotape the seized engine because it's still sitting out back behind his mechanic shop. So that's what I did. I videotaped my mechanic signing it. He said, I am so-and-so. I won't name him either. And I put it up on YouTube and I sent them a letter with the link. And I said, watch that. Okay, it proves that I'm not making up my story. I waited, weeks go by, I call them and they said, yeah, we watched that. How do we know that's not just a friend? I mean, I was outside his shop with his sign, with the receipt. He showed his receipt book. He said, I am so-and-so. And they said, well, that could all be staged. And that's when I clued in, they don't want to help me. Okay, and I hope you're hearing this. Their message was, oh, we stand behind our product. Really? Because I'm going above and beyond. Like, this is 10 months into it at this point. So then I call my sister-in-law who works for a lawyer and I said, look, they told me they would come good if I could just prove my story was true. And she said, if you make up a legal affidavit, then they can't, I mean, that's a legal document in court. So they have to acknowledge that it's valid. So that's what I did. I made up a statement with all of everything I've told you in the video, plus more. VIN numbers, dates, the receipts, all of that. And then I had my mechanic sign it in front of a commissioner of oaths, I think is what they're called. Basically, it was a lawyer's secretary who is a sworn commissioner of oaths. She knows both myself and the mechanic. So I signed an affidavit, my mechanic signed an affidavit, and I thought, I win. This is it. I mailed it to them. I was like, this is finally going to help me out. And I waited a month. Finally, I called, and they said, yeah, we got that. We got the affidavits, and then we closed your case. They closed my case, and I said, why? Not enough information. I said, what more information did you want? Well, we didn't get to inspect the engine. Well, this mechanic with 20 years of experience, I mean, if you want the engine, I can deliver it to your dealership. And I even said that. I said, I can deliver it tomorrow. Drop it right off at my dealership. And they said, no, not necessary. You know why? Because your case is closed. And I said, well, open it back up. We don't do that. I called the local dealership. They said, we're no longer allowed to talk to you about this case. Drop it. So after, it was about 14 months, I had to drop it. Now, this is hard because I'd spent a lot of time, like my hope was it just kept getting higher and higher, right? And then they just dropped the ball. So that's why I'm making this video. I don't expect I'll ever get the 2500 back. Sold the car, and I bought a Toyota. I'm not trying to advertise for Toyota. Could have been anything. Ford Fusion. Could have been a Honda Accord. I got a Toyota Sienna. Love it. It has not seized or left me on the side of the road. I just wanted to say this. Hyundai's, I think they're doing quite well as far as sales go. They look great. They perform pretty good. But as far as reliability goes, people, it's a ticking time bomb. I mean, do the research. I'm just one person with one experience, so maybe I am kind of the oddball out and they're really good with everybody else. But all I know is do a search when you're done watching this video. There's a couple other things I want to tell you. Right here, yeah, you might find this interesting. So where I work with 3 or 4 other guys. I told them my story, and I found out that one of them, a couple years ago, he got home in his Hyundai SUV. I don't know if it was the Santa Fe or Tucson. And his neighbors called him and said, by the way, your SUV's on fire and it's catching on your house. So he had siding damage and his car was a write-off. Now they did replace it because they said, that's our bad, engine problems, they caught on fire. Still, kind of scary. And another one of the guys that I work with, he said, hey, just this past weekend, that's what he said when I told him my story. I was on a hockey tournament trip with my kid, and I was a passenger in the front seat, and pulling out on the highway, and it was a Hyundai SUV, don't know what kind, I think it was a Santa Fe, maybe, Tucson, I don't know. And the engine just seized, just like that on the highway. They were 5 hours from home. Okay, so I don't know what ended up with that guy, if he did get it replaced for free or not. So my question for you is, you really want to be driving around with one of these motors? If a salesman tells you we stand behind your product, don't trust them. Okay, they're trying to sell you a vehicle. I learned that the hard way. They told me they would stand behind their motors. They didn't. They just played with me for a year and then dropped my case. I wish I'd never sold my Tercel. And that's all I have to say. So Video's done. Go do a search. If you have a Hyundai right now, check the oil a lot. It wasn't an oil problem anyway, but you just want to be really, really careful about that. And I wish you all the best.